We didn't just talk about the future of Doge, we just stumbled upon the future of humanity. Elon says we're in danger, and he's got a plan to save us. What's more challenging, going to Mars or taking on Washington?
Going to Mars. Well, not going to Mars once, but say going to Mars to build a self-sustaining civilization on Mars. That is a very difficult thing, which SpaceX has not yet done.
SpaceX is planning thousands of rocket launches to send people to Mars. But here's the shocking part. The plan isn't just to transport humans, it's to build a city that governs itself, with no allegiance to Earth. This isn't science fiction, it's written into terms linked to Starlink. If that's true, then SpaceX isn't only building spacecraft, they're challenging centuries of law. Could one company really ignite Earth's first interplanetary sovereignty crisis? Let's lay out why this single detail changes everything you thought you knew about Mars colonization. But before we dive in, please hit subscribe and like the video. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow the community and bring you even more exciting space discovery videos. Elon Musk puts survival at the heart of his Mars project. He frames exploration not as curiosity, but protection. If civilization is scattered across multiple worlds, then the odds of humanity continuing rise dramatically. He has repeatedly stated that there's always some chance that something could go wrong on Earth, and points to the most famous case in history, the dinosaurs. For 160 million years, they were the dominant life forms. But one impact sealed their fate. Musk's argument is that relying on one planet means gambling our entire species against similar odds. Critics, however, don't see this as practical. Astrophysicist Martin Rees has gone as far as calling the Mars project a dangerous delusion, insisting that our attention should focus on fixing issues like climate change here on Earth. Why, they ask, pour resources into another world when rising sea levels, wildfires and energy transitions already stretch global capacities? They suggest that Mars acts as a distraction, pulling urgency away from problems that could destabilize billions alive today. But Musk insists the choice is not either or, but both. Earth can and should be stabilized while future generations gain a foothold elsewhere. To support his reasoning, history holds warnings. Civilizations as sophisticated as the Maya or Mesopotamians prospered for centuries, only to collapse when farming systems failed or the environment shifted beyond their control. Those were isolated failures. For a globalized species, the stakes are magnified. On one world, everyone shares the same risks, whether they emerge from nature itself or from human mistakes. Take nuclear weapons, for instance. With thousands still deployed, a conflict could trigger what scientists call a nuclear winter, plunging temperatures worldwide and disrupting food supplies for years. Climate change presents another slow-moving danger, altering coastlines and ecosystems in ways that could spark endless migrations and conflicts. And above it all, the quiet drift of asteroids through the solar system continues. Their orbits cross ours and most fly past without notice. But as history shows, it only takes one. From this frame, Mars becomes less of a thrill and more of an obligation. Colonization isn't aimed at adventure seekers. It is meant to create a second base of operations, a city that could survive if Earth suffers catastrophe. The initiative is described not as optional, but as an imperative measure to safeguard the future of life. That leads to the next question. If survival is the reason, then how does SpaceX actually intend to move whole communities across millions of kilometers to start that second home? Imagine moving not a small crew of astronauts, but entire neighborhoods of people, along with the machines, food systems, and factories they'll need, across millions of kilometers to another planet. That is the scale of SpaceX's ambition, and it all centers on one machine, the Starship. Each craft is designed to be completely reusable, not a one-way ticket, but a shuttle that can fly back and forth. The long-term plan is staggering. Over 1,000 launches during every 26-month window when Earth and Mars align, with a goal of carrying 1 million settlers and millions of tons of cargo. To put that into perspective, this would require launching more than 10 Starships per day during those rare windows. The plan rests on solving challenges that have never been attempted before at this scale. Take orbital refueling. A single Starship needs around 1,200 metric tons of liquid methane and oxygen before it can head toward Mars. No rocket carries that much to orbit, so SpaceX proposes sending tanker Starships one after another, each docked to refill the main craft. Now imagine that process repeated not once, but hundreds of times. Hundreds of tanker flights for hundreds of interplanetary ships. The logistics alone resemble a planetary-scale supply chain, rather than a single space mission. The goal of all this effort is to launch what Musk once described as a Mars Armada. Picture fleets of stainless steel rockets, hundreds of them, departing in choreographed waves, each carrying life support modules, construction materials, and eventually, people. No space agency in history has coordinated launches on anything close to this level. And yet, even if every ship reaches space, the risks are far from over. Starship's protective heat shield faces one of the biggest unknowns. Its hexagonal tiles are designed for Earth re-entry, but the Martian atmosphere is extremely thin. That thinness means the ship must hit the atmosphere hard to slow down, generating a violent ionized cloud of hot gases. Mars' carbon dioxide atmosphere produces more free oxygen in this process than Earth's does, which can erode protective materials. Engineers are still testing whether new composites or flight paths can handle dozens of re-entries over a Starship's lifetime. Landing such an enormous spacecraft is another puzzle. Starship is 200 times more massive than anything that has touched down on Mars. The Vikings, the rovers, even the Perseverance lander, none come close in size. Parachutes are useless because the air is so thin, and powerful engines must do the work of slowing it down. Engines that have never been tested under those exact conditions. SpaceX isn't planning to send humans first. Instead, fleets of cargo ships would land with machinery and construction systems. Optimus robots are expected to assemble infrastructure like solar fields, habitats, and propellant plants. But skepticism remains since existing Martian rovers move slowly and struggle against dust, radiation, temperature swings, and rocky terrain. Producing enough water from soil and splitting it into hydrogen and oxygen adds another dependency, one that needs immense power. This shows the scale of the gamble. It's not only rockets, it's the creation of a functioning supply chain on another planet. And yet, the hardest question may not be engineering at all, because once the first settlers step out onto Martian soil, the debate begins over something far more complicated. Who rules Mars? What if SpaceX declared Mars a free planet beyond Earth's laws? Would nations agree, or would sparks fly? This isn't a random thought experiment. Hidden within the Starlink service terms is a clause that lays out a surprising stance. It states that the parties recognize Mars as a free planet, and that no Earth-based government has authority or sovereignty over Martian activities. In other words, Mars should govern itself. On paper, it sounds like a bold declaration of independence. But what does that mean in practice once thousands of settlers actually step foot there? Here's where the clash begins. Since 1967, the Outer Space Treaty has outlined rules for every nation exploring space. According to it, celestial bodies are treated like international waters. No country has the right to claim land, build a state, or enforce sovereignty. Even more importantly, it says launch states, the countries that authorize and regulate spacecraft, stay legally responsible for any activities their citizens or companies take on in space. If Starship launches from Texas, the United States could be tied to what happens once the settlers arrive on Mars. This creates a direct conflict between the treaty and SpaceX's idea of Martian self-governance. Now, here's a question for you. Can a single company, by slipping a clause into its internet agreement, really upend decades of international law? Imagine the scenario. Governments have spent years arguing over stretches of ocean or tiny rocks in disputed seas. They have clashed politically and even militarily over who owns what. Now scale that problem to an entire planet. Mars is almost the size of Earth's landmass. If settlers declare independence, would the countries that built the rockets, supported the launches, and provided research simply step aside? History suggests it wouldn't be so simple. SpaceX's own vision ties governance to something else entirely: labor. Since the cost of a one-way ticket will be enormous at first, there's the idea that colonists could work off their debt once they arrive. Some see this as an innovative way of financing interplanetary migration. Others view it as a recipe for labor exploitation, especially if settlers depend entirely on SpaceX-built habitats, power stations, and supply chains just to survive. Musk has said he wants to bring ticket prices down to the cost of a US house, making it conceivable for ordinary families. But even then, not everyone could pay up front, meaning work agreements could be common. That leaves us with a fascinating and unsettling picture. On one hand, SpaceX talks about self-determination and direct democracy led by the settlers themselves. On the other, the very structure of survival may bind new Martians into contracts of necessity. So are they pioneers of a truly free world, or workers tied to a corporate system in a harsher environment than Earth has ever known? One way or another, SpaceX is forcing us to rethink not only how to live on another planet, but who gets to make the rules there. And that raises the unavoidable question: will Earth allow these new systems to exist, or will politics shut the dream down before the rockets even leave? SpaceX's Mars vision isn't really about rockets or technology alone. It's a live test of sovereignty, economy, and human ambition at a planetary scale. It asks whether we can survive by spreading across worlds, but also whether we can rewrite rules of society while doing it. Elon Musk has argued that there's always some chance that something could go wrong on Earth, and Mars offers protection against that risk. But beyond survival comes something deeper. Should Mars belong to Earth, private settlers, or no one at all? In the end, Mars may reshape how civilization defines itself here and beyond.